If you're working as a health, fitness, or a wellness professional, it's pretty likely that you're going to run into clients that are dealing with gallbladder polyps. So in this video, I'm going to help you understand why these clients see these polyps showing up, some indications that it can give about other issues that could be going on inside the body, and steps you can help them take to turn the situation around. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So remember, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving anybody medical advice here, but if you had a client that was diagnosed with some gallbladder polyps, they probably left the office kind of wondering well, why is that even happening? So I just want to shed some light here with some studies and some other papers that I dug up, and I'll put the links to those studies in the description below this video so you can dig into that a little bit deeper for anybody who wants to understand these things more. But I just want to explain how these show up and what else it can kind of give you an indication about what's going on. So when we're looking at gallbladder polyps and the frequency of these things showing up for people, it appears that about 4 to 7% of adults will experience these gallbladder polyps. But of those 4 to 7%, only about 5% of those polyps will be the bad kind that have the ability to turn malignant and really be a major problem. And it appears that 60 to 90% are what they call pseudopolyps, which are basically like deposits of cholesterol, like a little sac of cholesterol that might stick to the side of the inside lining of that gallbladder sac. So to understand why these might show up, we need to understand what this gallbladder is really all about. So what happens is when we eat food, our stomach should make hydrochloric acid, or HCl, that helps us acidify that food so that we can break it down and get all the nutrients out of that. And then when that acidic product leaves the stomach and goes down here into the duodenum, that's what triggers this gallbladder to squirt this alkaline bile down to help neutralize these acids, and bile also helps us emulsify our dietary fats so that we can access those dietary fats and use them in the body. It also helps us access fat-soluble vitamins like A, E, D, and K, so that can be a really big deal. So this liver makes this soapy bile stuff, and then it sends it down here into the gallbladder, and the gallbladder's job is to concentrate that bile and store it. So it concentrates the bile so that it can be more effective. A small amount is only needed to really help neutralize these acids and help us emulsify our fats and all that good stuff. So that's the main job of this gallbladder. And it's kind of like if you were cooking a gravy on the stove. You know, you would cook it on the stove and you'd be stirring it, and you're basically cooking the water or the liquids out of that gravy, and then it gets thicker and thicker. So that's kind of what happens when we're concentrating something. We're basically removing the liquid or the water out of it, and then it becomes more thick. And a lot of people like to kind of blame the cholesterol for these polyps, because when you look into the polyps, they're made of cholesterol. But the reality is that there are substances in this bile, like cholesterol and calcium salts, that when you remove the water, it makes the bile more thick. And then when it's thick, it might not flow as well and come down when it's called on. So if this bile is too thick and sticky now to really flow like it should, it's going to stay in the gallbladder. And then remember, the gallbladder's job is to concentrate it. So it's just going to continue to concentrate it. The concentration trick doesn't really have an off switch. The gallbladder just keeps doing its job. So that's going to become thicker and thicker until it can concentrate into sludge, or even these polyps that can stick onto the side, or in an even more severe case, into gallstones. So when you look up gallbladder polyps, you're going to see it's probably usually caused by either inflammation, excess cholesterol, or abnormal cell growth is what they really feel like they want to blame it on. But we really need to look at this concentration factor here. And when we look at other characteristics that show up with these gallbladder polyps, we see things like high sugars. Like, it's very common to see gallbladder polyps in some type 2 diabetics that have a high blood sugar. We see it a lot with high stress hormones, and we know that high stress hormones like estrogen have the ability to thicken up this bile so that it won't flow correctly. We also see a lot of gallstones when we see gallbladder polyps, which makes sense. If issues are thickening up the bile so that it can't flow correctly and it's going to concentrate into these gallstones, then it's pretty likely that you might also see some of these bile structures concentrating into the polyps that stick to the side of the inside lining as well. And we also see a lot of inflammation. And what's interesting is you can see a lot of these things together with a lot of people. You know, when sugars are high, we're also going to see high insulin. And insulin has the ability, when it goes high, to create inflammation. So we're right back here to this inflammation issue. Another interesting thing is that when insulin goes high, a lot of times cholesterol will go high as well to help deal with that inflammation that high insulin is creating. So is it really the cholesterol's fault, or is it a lot of these other things that are driving the situation? I don't know. But when you're looking at steps to take with your clients that are dealing with this issue, it seems very important to help thin out this bile so that it can flow correctly. We hear from a lot of people that take steps to thin out that bile and get things flowing that actually melt down stones, and then they all of a sudden don't have these gallstones anymore. So we hear about that a lot, so that makes sense that getting this bile moving could also create a similar result when we see polyps sticking to the inside lining of that gallbladder. So one thing that we want to think about when we're looking at why wouldn't bile be flowing is that it's very common for someone not to be making enough stomach acid. And if the food is not being acidified properly because the client is not making enough stomach acid, then it won't come down here, and that acidic product won't trigger the gallbladder to squirt the bile down to come help neutralize those acids. There's not really any acids there, so it doesn't need to trigger the gallbladder to do its job to send the bile down to help neutralize those. So if it's not being called on, then the bile is just going to stay in there and continue to concentrate until it concentrates into this sludge, stones, or polyps, and all these problems that can come about. So what we want to do is we want to help clients look at, am I making enough stomach acid so that I'm signaling the gallbladder, or are other things possibly creating this bile to become too thick and sticky to flow correctly? So we'll put the links in the description below for our videos on 10 signs of low stomach acid and 10 signs of poor bile flow, so you can understand those signs and walk through those with your clients to figure out if they may be showing signs of maybe either low stomach acid or poor bile flow. It's very common when somebody has one that eventually the other one will have problems as well, because they seem to have the ability to work together and trigger each other, kind of a thing. And if you want to better understand how to help clients improve these digestive malfunctions, chapters 3 and 4 of my book, Health Pro Results, kind of walks you through figuring out which aspects of digestion for each client are not working correctly and steps you can help them take to improve those. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'm going to put a link in the description below so you can get the whole thing totally for free, and then you can just jump to chapters 3 and 4. And if you happen to be a consumer that just watched this video because you're interested in the topic, then we'll put a link for our book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, and you can get that one for free, and that information is in chapters 3 and 4 of that book as well. And that book is just a little more set up for consumers, where the Health Pro Results book is really written for health professionals. But right now, if you want to better understand how to help clients thin this bile out so things can flow through there correctly and get rid of all these things that are accumulating in the gallbladder, then jump over right now and check out our video on 5 steps to help clients improve bile flow. I can't wait to hear about your results.